We continue with this theme. The Police Minister Bheki Cele and National Commissioner General Fanie Masemola also visited KwaZulu-Natal today to assess the state of readiness ahead of the EFF National Shutdown on Monday. The province was the hardest hit during the 2021 July unrest, with looting, violence as well as deaths. For more on this, we are now joined by South African Police Service spokesperson Brigadier Athlenda Mathe. Brigadier, pleasure to have you on the program this evening. Now, it would appear very significant that the police minister, along with other top brass of the police, visited KZN, which was arguably the epicenter of those violent and deadly protests back in July 2021. Now, the police were not prepared then when those protests broke out. Fast forward to now, what lessons do you think can be drawn, especially in preparation for this planned shutdown by the EFF come Monday?
Well, a very good evening, and thank you so much for the opportunity. As the SAPS, through the National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structure, we are better prepared, we are better coordinated, we are implementing a multidisciplinary approach where we will be working collectively with various other law enforcement agencies to ensure that we prevent and combat any forms of criminality. As you've rightly said, we have learned our lessons during the July 2021 unrest, and now it is to implement the recommendations and to ensure that we act within the confines of the law, but collectively we ensure that there is no lawlessness, there is no acts of criminality, but to ensure, most importantly, that we're better coordinated, there's better communication against all stakeholders that are involved in the fight against crime.
Now, it is also very important to note assurances from the leadership of the EFF, which has really promised that on this platform, amongst many others, that theirs will be a very peaceful protest as the police, along with your partners in law enforcement, in any way, does this give you assurances or give you any ease?
We welcome the calls made by the leaders, conveners of this particular planned protest, and that is exactly what we are expecting of them as leaders of this particular planned protest, that it is their responsibility to ensure that this gathering takes place in a responsible and in a safe manner. As law enforcement, we are quite firm that we are not going to allow any lawlessness, we are not going to allow any public violence, any looting, any destruction of private and public property. We are not going to allow any barricading of roads. So it's quite important to indicate that as law enforcement, through the National Joint and Operational Intelligence Structure, we have put measures in place to ensure the safety and security of everyone in the country. We have a responsibility as the SAPS, as law enforcement, guided by Section 205 of the Constitution, to prevent and combat any forms of criminality, to maintain public order, to protect South Africans, all inhabitants in South Africa and their property, but mostly it's quite important that we uphold and enforce the law. And we cannot do this alone. We are obviously relying on our communities, which are important stakeholders in the fight against crime, to also play their rightful role in ensuring that this particular planned protest takes place in a safe and secure environment. So yes, we do have a mandate to ensure that both protesters and those that will not be taking part in the protest are protected at all times.
Now, Brigadier, driving around parts of the country, or notably even here in Johannesburg, one does get the sense of this heightened police visibility, or at least in my own observation while driving, it is quite evident that there appears to be more police activity on major highways right here in Johannesburg. And just to take a tweet from the EFF's account, it says that the party has been informed that the South African Police Service has also deployed more police than apartheid did during the state of emergency back in the 1980s, and that the state right now has even resorted to closing tire shops ahead of the shutdown. Would you describe this activity for Monday as really a part of a specialized operation, or is it merely just part of normal policing?
Look, this particular protest has instilled fear in our communities. It has instilled fear in the business sector, and that is quite evident with the official communication that is coming through from various stakeholders. The words that we utilized on social media, shut down, close businesses, nothing will be operating, really instilled so much fear in our communities that we felt that as the SAPS, through the National Joint and Operational Intelligence Structure, we need to beef up security, we need to enhance and maximize our deployments to ensure that we ensure that every person in this country is and feels safe. But most importantly, we ensure that Monday is a normal working day. It's a normal business day. So as rightly indicated, we are on the ground. We are implementing a multidisciplinary approach. We are working jointly with various other stakeholders, including our community policing police forums, which are a very important stakeholder. As you rightly indicated, from yesterday as well as today, we saw the Minister of Police together with the National Commissioner of the South African Police Service visiting the various operations where they were assessing the state of readiness. And obviously our focus was in Gauteng and in KwaZulu-Natal. Those were areas that were that were largely affected by the July 2021 unrest. Most importantly, what our visit entailed is to engage with communities, engage with the structures to ensure that they are on board and that we ensure that everyone in the country is and feels safe at all times. But most importantly, we ensure that Monday is a normal day. There is no national shutdown. We know of a planned protest, and as the SAPS, through the NAT joints, we are planning accordingly. As I've indicated, our mandate is clear. Our plans are in place and we are on track.
As we wrap up our conversation, for those who are not taking part in this protest for Monday, or for businesses who are opting to keep their doors open for normal operations, what word of advice do you have for them? Or is there any word for them to take a precaution as well?
Okay. So what is important is that, firstly, communities, everyone in the country, the business sector is encouraged to report any wrongdoing timeously to the nearest police station or call the crime stop hotline number, to report any suspicious activities that they may know of that are planned to take place timeously to the SAPS, so that collectively we can ensure that everyone in the country is and feels safe. But what we can assure South Africans and the business sector, most importantly, is that they can rest assured that the NAT joints has put measures in place to ensure the safety and security of everyone in the country. But most importantly, they also need to play an active role in ensuring that we prevent and combat any forms of criminality that are set to take place on Monday. We welcome the calls for a peaceful protest. As I've indicated, that is what we are expecting from this particular planned protest that will be unfolding on Monday. But as I've rightly indicated, we are on the ground, we are on track. And we are working collectively with various other stakeholders. The private security is also on board. They act as our force multipliers. They act as our eyes and ears on the ground to ensure that collectively we ensure that law and order prevails in the country.
That was South African Police Service spokesperson Brigadier Athlenda Mathe, of course, speaking to us about their preparations ahead of the EFF's planned march